Greetings, students. Mr. Harrison from school. Just wanted to take a few minutes and walk through our lab safety procedures and rules with you. I recognize that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the labs might look very different than they used to look. But in the case that we might be able to either eventually go back to something like normal, or even if we can't go back to full normal, but we can kind of do something that's similar to what we would want to do. We need to go over the rules in the lab to make sure that you stay safe, because safety is our number one goal here at Daniel Morgan. Even more than learning, we want to make sure you make it through alive and safe. So without further ado, here are our lab safety rules. Pay attention. Read carefully. The PowerPoint is also attached to Canvas, so you can follow along at your own pace if you need to look at it again or review it or whatever. But here we go. Lab rule number 1, think before you act and use common sense. If it seems like it might be a bad idea, then don't do it. No horseplay in the lab, which includes running, jumping, standing on counters, leaving your lab station, hitting another student, throwing things, and or yelling. And I like to say, better safe than sorry. Don't do things without thinking. So just don't do things without thinking. That's what that says, moving it around a little bit. So basically what we're looking for out of you is think about it before you do it. That would help us avoid most of the mistakes made in the lab. A lot of times you get a thought in your head and you immediately do it without filtering it. That's a bad idea, especially when we're using both expensive and potentially dangerous lab equipment. Hopefully you all know that if a beaker breaks, it's now made of broken glass, which is sharp. So we don't want that situation. So just think before you act. Use your common sense. If you hear that whisper in your head that says, maybe I shouldn't do that, you should listen to that voice. All right. Lab rule number 2, be careful and aware of your surroundings. A lab setting should only include calm, slow, controlled, and careful movements. That's things like look around you before you turn around. Don't just swing your elbow. Look first, then turn your body around. Keep your arms in, not flailing around. And the thing that I like to think about is pretend in the lab that you're carrying raw eggs. Because if you're carrying raw eggs in your hand, you'd be very careful with those eggs because they break easily. So just be aware of what's around you, because that's part of, again, with the beakers breaking and all that stuff, we can avoid a lot of that if we are looking before we turn, if we're careful, if we're aware of what's around us. So be careful and aware of your surroundings is number 2. Lab rule number 3, communicate with your teacher. Always let Mr. Harrison know immediately if something goes wrong. If you drop a glass and breaks, if you have some lab equipment that's not functioning or that's missing, something spills, whatever it is, do not clean it up yourself unless I have specifically told you to do that. Most of the time, I will clean it up myself. So I don't want you to touch anything dangerous. I don't want to take that risk. It's not worth it to me. So just tell me about it if it goes wrong. If you don't know what to do with the lab, you can ask me. So whether you don't know what to do or if something goes wrong, in either situation, tell me about it or ask me about it. I would much rather hurt myself trying to pick up something than watch you hurt yourself. And I promise to never be mad at you if something breaks once. Now, it's a different story if you start to create a pattern over and over again of breaking things, because then you are not following lab rule number 2, which is be careful and aware of your surroundings. But I know accidents happen. Every year something gets broken. It's okay. I'm not going to be mad at you for accidentally knocking over a beaker unless that's your 7th beaker that you've knocked down. Lab rule number 3 is communicate with the teacher. Number 4, final rule, follow all instructions precisely. If the instructions say to do it, then do it. If the instructions don't say to do it, then don't do it. It's literally that simple. I like this picture because it kind of captures the look that I give. And this is my face after I just finished giving directions and a student asked me what to do. I don't give instructions for me. I already know how to do the lab. I've done it for years. I'm giving instructions for you. So that's a bad time to space out. So just pay attention when we're going through instructions. They'll also probably be written. But if you ever want to see me make either of these faces, then wait until right after I'm done with instructions and then say, wait, what do we do? So in other words, don't do that, because it makes pretty much every teacher on the planet upset. Couple helpful hints. There's only 4 lab rules. These are the helpful hints in addition to that. Always wear your PPE, which stands for personal protective equipment. It means wear your goggles and apron the whole time that you're at the lab station. I'm not going to make you wear them from the moment you get in the room usually, but if you are at a lab station which requires goggles, they will be set out for you, and it's expected that you'll wear them the whole time you're at the lab station. Even if you're done with that particular part of the lab, you have to keep them on until you're away from the lab station. I don't want any spills or anything getting in your eyes. And lastly, don't eat in the lab area at all. No eating or drinking, period, with one exception. If there is a lab that has an edible lab component at some point this year, I might tell you at the end of the lab, you will get to eat whatever it is that's there. That's the exception of the rule. If I don't say anything, just assume you shouldn't eat it, which is kind of following that, like, use your common sense and think before you act, lab rule number 1, because if you don't, if you're thinking before you act, if you're using your common sense, you're probably not going to want to take a beaker of something that you don't know what it is and guzzle it, because it might make you very sick. So very quick, let's review the 4 rules. Number 1, think before you act and use common sense. Number 2, be careful and aware of your surroundings. Number 3, communicate with the teacher, which is both tell me and ask me if you don't know. And number 4, follow all instructions precisely. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that it is helpful for you, and I hope to have a very good year.